So my name is Ben Mullen, and I'm going to be talking today about my seafaring years as a young radio officer in the British Merchant Navy. That would be from 1965 to 1969. So I finished the intermediate certificate in the summer of 1962, and I had a bit of wanderlust at the time, and it coincided with the Evening Herald running a series of articles on different occupations. And one of the occupations they covered was the occupation of a seagoing radio officer. So this intrigued me, and there was an ad from Marconi Marine alongside the article. On the article it said there was a picture of a radio officer and the equipment, the radio room, and the heading was well paid to see the world. Struck a chord with me, it really intrigued me, and I wanted to pursue that particular avenue. So I discovered that I could be trained in Dublin in Atlantic College in Ranelagh. So I went in there with one of my parents, my dad, and we had an interview with the principal, Mr. Fitzgerald, and he gave us a prospectus, and it was sort of a green light from him. And on the prospectus that he gave us in handwritten, it was handwriting, it was employment guaranteed upon completion of the course. Now this was a big attraction because, guaranteed employment back in those days was pretty good. I didn't want to go on and do the intercert. 2 more years in secondary didn't really appeal to me, and I wanted to get out and earn, because I knew people who were out earning, mechanics and other people like that at my age. They were helping out in garages and so on. I wanted to get up and running and get out and see the world as well. So I enrolled in Atlantic College in Ranelagh, and it took about 1.5 years. I was surprised, but the course only takes about 1.5 years. And there are 2 levels of proficiency. You get a certificate, and it's either a first class certificate or a second class certificate. The differences between them was that for the exams, first class required a higher pass rate. And for the Morse code, where 20 words a minute was okay for a second class certificate, you had to go up to 25 words a minute for a first class certificate. And I should probably explain that a word, when you're doing Morse code, a word would be 5 characters long. So that was interesting. Like I said, we covered theory and practice of general electronics and focusing on marine electronics as well. And we learned how to send and receive Morse code. They had a room set up with all the Marconi Marine equipment in it. So we could practice how to change frequencies, tune the transmitter, switch on the receiver, tune into a particular frequency. The Morse key was there, so we could practice sending messages and receiving messages as well through Morse. At the end of the period with Atlantic College, I finished and qualified with a first class certificate in telegraphy. But my parents felt that I was only 17 years of age actually when I finished in Atlantic College. And my parents felt that I was a bit too young to go to sea at 17 years of age. So I ended up getting a job with Irish Rally Industries in Hanover Quay, which is a bicycle factory. And I was working in production control. And I stayed with that for 5 months. But the sea was calling me, so to speak. I went down to Marconi Marine in Dublin, had an interview in their depot there, and succeeded in getting a job with Marconi Marine. When I was at home, living at home, and I'd qualified, and I was going over to Liverpool for the first time, my dad accompanied me on the bus, the 46A from Dundleary, because I had to go to get on the ferry in the North Wall and go across to Liverpool. And I got on the bus. Now, my dad worked, this is just an aside, but he worked for CIE, and he was a wages clerk in CIE, so he was able to get on the bus for free, sort of thing. But that's just by the by. But we got on the bus. The bus actually went past our house in Dunleary, on Monkstown Farm, and the bus stop was just across the road. So, and my mother was at the door of the house, waving, and my dad, we both got on the bus to bring us into Dublin, and both of us were in tears because I was 18 years of age, leaving home on a big adventure, and it was a big thing. It was a big thing, and he was upset as well. So, at the age of 18, I reported to the Marconi depot in Liverpool to see what was going to happen, and they had a ship for me which was going to West Africa, and it was called the MV McCurdy Palm, part of the Palm Line fleet, which is actually owned by Unilever Brothers, and so off I go down to the McCurdy Palm, which was in the port of Liverpool. I was going to be the trainee radio officer, because it was my very first ship. And so there was a senior radio officer on there, and his name was Les Holt, and he was going to show me the ropes. And it took about 6 months for to become a qualified radio officer. You know, the traineeship lasted 6 months. We went from Liverpool. Les, by the way, was a Liverpudlian, and really sound guy, really good guy, and showed me the ropes, and helped me a lot in my first 6 months on the McCurdy Palm. I had 3 voyages altogether on the McCurdy Palm down to West Africa mainly, and he showed me how what the routine was and so on. And the thing was that on a ship like that, by the way, the ship was a hybrid ship. It had 3 dry cargo hatches, and it had 6 oil tanks. And what it carried in the oil tanks was palm oil, which we got from Nigeria in West Africa. The palm oil was brought up to Liverpool to Port Sunlight, which was owned by Unilever, to make Sunlight soap, which you may have heard of. That's what we were doing. The duties on board, say the daily routine was 2 hours on duty and 2 hours off duty, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. So it'd be 8 to 10, and then you'd be off from 10 to 12, and then on again 12 to 2, off 2 to 4, on again 4 to 6, off 6 to 8, and finally on again from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. So your work day kind of stretched out from early morning to late at night, but it was okay, because what else are you going to be doing anyway on a ship, you know, when you're at sea? So on my very first voyage, I crossed we crossed the equator, because we were on our way down to Africa, to West Africa, to a place called Senegal, and the capital Dakar, to get fuel and more provisions for the ship. Normally the tradition is when you cross the equator, there's a ceremony, and like you get tied to a chair and get soaked up and all sorts of stuff, maybe feathers and stuff get stuck to you. And lucky for me, that didn't happen to me. I escaped that one. But what happened was, Les my boss, was into calligraphy, and he did out a beautiful scroll for me in coloured ink, supposedly from the god of the sea, Neptune, about crossing the equator, you know. So that was really nice. Anyway, on the way down to Dakar, we were told we were also going to Cape Town in South Africa. So this was unusual for this particular ship to go down there. It usually just went to Nigeria. But anyway, off we went down to Cape Town, and it's a beautiful city, beautiful port with Table Mountain in the background, and you have a cloud formation on the Table Mountain, which is known as the tablecloth. Our stay in Cape Town was about a week, and it was nice. The thing about being a radio officer is when you're in port, the radio room shuts down and you have no duties. So it's ideal for sightseeing, you know. So it's great to be able to go ashore, and it's illegal actually for a ship to be transmitting within territorial waters of any country. You can't do it. So so the radio room was shut down, and I was able to go ashore with my trusty camera and go around and do some sightseeing, see the sights, and try and stay out of trouble, and just have a good time. But I had to keep an eye on the ship as regards when it was leaving port. That was important. And I came a cropper once, which I'll come to later. So then we made our way up to Lagos in Nigeria, and one of the main ports. In fact, that was the capital of Nigeria at the time. And from there we went to another port, Port Harcourt in Nigeria. Now, this Port Harcourt was up a river called the River Bonny, and it was jungle on either side. Like, it's tropical jungle in Nigeria. Once you get out of the city, like, it's palm trees and, you know, mangroves and all sorts of stuff. And the poverty struck me quite strongly, because it's just on a different level altogether compared to what I was used to. You know, you'd have people coming out in their little dugouts trying to sell fruit to the ship as it was slowly making its way up the river. They would be able to transfer money and fruit and so on because the ship was going quite slow up the river into the jungle, so to speak. And when we arrived in Port Harcourt, like as I say, the poverty, the mud huts and so on, it was really quite shocking to see it. So then we made our way back to Dakar for more supplies, fuel and water and so on, and then back to Liverpool. And we had a cargo of animal skins and logs, but mainly it was the palm oil that we were delivering to Port Sunlight. So then I did 3 voyages on the McCurdy Palm, and on one of them we did something slightly different. We went into Freetown in Sierra Leone, which is kind of on the way around the west coast. It was one of the first countries we came to. And we called it the Freetown to pick up these fellas that were known collectively as crew boys. They were guys who would come on and they'd sleep on deck for weeks while the ship was trading in West Africa. And their job, well, they had multiple jobs to chip and paint, for instance. And then when we were in port, they had security jobs. It was their job to stop the pilfering. So they'd go down into the holds of the ship, because the dockers from Port Harcourt or Lagos were in the holds. And so there could be a bit of pilfering going on. So these crew boys acted as security guards in the holds when we were in port. And they'd be with us, as I said, for weeks. And on the way outward bound back home, we would drop them off in Freetown again in Sierra Leone and make our way home again. One of the things that went on, because we were going to West Africa, was smuggling of African grey parrots. Apparently, African grey parrots are great mimics, and they learn very quickly. So if you say a few words to them, they'll pick it up in no time. And apparently, you could get a few bob for them and make a tidy profit if you sold them to the pet shop in Liverpool. So the guys were buying these locally in Nigeria and smuggling them when they got to Liverpool to the local pet shop and making a tidy profit there. The next ship then was, I joined again in Liverpool, the MV Huntsville. And this was a dry cargo ship. When we were joining, we were told, because you have to sign on the articles, it's like a big ledger. What we were told by the agent who was there, well, you're going to be going to Australia and Japan, maybe to Australia and Japan again a second time. And so you're going to be away 6 to 8 months, and then to be home. Well, what happened was we were away for 15 months, and we went around the world twice on that one voyage. So this was the first ship where I was going to be the senior RO, the only RO, so to speak. So it was a new crew, new faces. The captain was sort of upper class English, and sort of a bit distant, and sort of a godlike figure, because the captain is God when you're on a ship. The other, the mates and so on, were English as well. Actually, one of them was Welsh. A different bunch of people. There was an engineer, one of the engineers, Eddie, from Kent. I got to know him, and we kind of became pals. And it was a new experience, more responsibility on my shoulders. So we went from Canada, from Port Alfred in the Quebec province, down to Cristobal, which is at the beginning of the Panama Canal in the Caribbean. We were, in the port of Cristobal this night, and we went ashore to a local bar, a bunch of us, and I didn't drink, but I went along for the fun and just to get out and about. And the chief mate, he arranged for this hostess in the bar to come over to me and to start making overtures to me, and I was only a kid. I was 19 or something, 18, 19, and I wasn't of a mind to go off with her from the bar. But I found out later that the chief mate, who had kind of was messing, went off with her and discovered to his cost that it wasn't a her, it was a he. We went through the Panama Canal, and the thing about the Panama Canal is it has locks. It uses locks to get over a mountain range there's a mountain range goes through Panama, and so it has to go up the mountain range and down the other side. So there are 3 locks on each side to get over. Anyway, across the Pacific then, and it took about 3 weeks to get across the Pacific to Sydney. That was a bit of a arduous voyage across the Pacific because of the length of time. Because I was on the radio, I'd hear ships transmitting and so on nearby, and you might see one maybe every few days or so, but it was very solitary. There was a feeling of being on the briny deep on your own kind of thing, and it was very solitary. Well, Sydney had a lot to offer as a city because it's got the Sydney Harbour Bridge, it's got a zoo on an island in the harbour. What I found was I did suffer from seasickness, and I found out very quickly when I was on the Huntsville. The first day out, we were off the south coast of Ireland, and there was a storm brewing. The captain decided to drop anchor off the south coast of Ireland to sort of in the lee of the land, if you like, and wait out the storm, the worst of the storm. And the ship was anchored yet, but there was a huge swell, and the ship was rocking and rolling backwards and forwards like this. And I discovered that I was seasick, and it's an awful feeling. Being seasick is, I found anyway, it's just absolutely horrendous. You can end up on the floor feeling really bad. You can be in the toilet holding onto the basin for ages, getting sick, retching. If you don't have anything in your stomach, it's just as bad. Anything that was there is gone now, and boil, it's horrible, and all you want to do is die. You just want to die. And so I took to the bunk, and I did manage to do my watches, but I was in an awful state. And gradually then, after about 3 days, I think it was, I began to recover. We went round from Sydney to Melbourne, and Melbourne is a bit like a Victorian, was anyway, a Victorian city, old buildings from Victorian era, and then from there we went up to a place called Newcastle in New South Wales. Newcastle, they exported coal from Newcastle in New South Wales, just like Newcastle in the northeast of England. And so we took on a cargo of coal, went up to Japan, to Osaka. We were being pulled towards the jetty, the tugs were helping. We had the ropes on the bollards and we were being winched. And the Japanese dockers were already on board, opening the hatch covers, and the cranes were coming in and grabbing the coal before we were properly against the jetty. And we were thinking, wow, these guys don't mess. These guys don't hang around. Highly productive, Safety-wise, maybe not the best thing, but it was impressive. We were all impressed how efficient and productive they were. The Japanese culture was quite a shock, and it's probably one of the best places I've ever been to. We were very, very impressed with the Japanese culture. The mix of Western meets Eastern in Osaka, where we were. And the city was neon lights everywhere, restaurants, fast food, nightclubs, very, very, bars, very, very Western. But then there was the Eastern tradition as well, with the traditional garb of the kimono and so on. And it was really interesting to see how the two cultures sort of merged. And it was very impressive. One thing I noticed was in a department store, you go up the escalator in a department store, there'd be a welcomer standing, a female in a kimono, etc. And her job was just to welcome you onto that floor. And that's the way it was on each floor, Then we went to Taiwan. It was Formosa then, I think. And more the same, going ashore, getting a few souvenirs. Then on to Hong Kong. Hong Kong was a revelation because of the sky, the cityscape. It's just quite amazing with the skyscrapers. Normally, the first boat that comes out to a ship is the customs launch, but in this case, it was what was euphemistically called the meat boat, and it was the boat with all the ladies from the red light district were coming out and plying their trade, So they'd come along knocking on the cabin doors, and it was very sort of business-like, And you could have a tailor would come on board as well, and he could do you up a custom-made, handmade suit, for I think it was £15 back then. Yeah, over to New York, across the Atlantic, and that basically was the end of the first circumnavigation. We started out in Liverpool, we'd gone around the world, across the Atlantic again, into New York. Then we went down the east coast of the US down to and into the Caribbean and into New Orleans, or New Orleans as they call it themselves. And we went ashore there and checked out the French Quarter. Interesting to go along, see the nightclubs and who was playing and so on. Back up to the east coast of Charleston, New York, and then across to Genoa in Italy. Then we went to Turkey. We went to Izmir, which is on the south coast. It's in the Mediterranean. Then we went to Iskenderun, which is as far east in the Mediterranean as you can go, and it's a Turkish naval base, and it's close to Cyprus. And the Turkish invasion of Cyprus occurred a few years later in the mid-70s, and a lot of the ships assembled in Iskenderun and were used in the invasion of Cyprus. Then from Iskenderun we went to Egypt, we went to Alexandria, and we were going out east again basically. And in Alexandria, this is where I came a cropper as regards the ship and going ashore. I went ashore sightseeing, didn't have the timing right, I wasn't told or didn't ask or got it wrong, I can't remember. When I came back, the ship was gone. It wasn't at the jetty. and I was absolutely panicking. I went down to the customs building and up to an office and spoke to a customs guy there, and they were very, very helpful to me. They got me down into a customs launch and away off after the ship. Now, Alexandria Harbour is huge. I mean, it can accommodate hundreds of ships, so it's a big, big harbour. Luckily for me, the Huntsville was still in the harbour making its way out, you know, and the gangway was down, and the launch went alongside, and I was able to get on the gangway and went up, and the third officer was at the top of the gangway, and he said, "The old man wants to speak to you." So I had to go up to the bridge, and I got a right bollocking from the captain, rightly so, you know, because legally he's not allowed to sail without an RO. Yeah. So then we went to Eritrea, which a place called Massawa, and the poverty again, it was like straw mud huts and people wearing little or nothing, and the searing heat, no proper roads or anything, just dirt tracks and so on. And it brought it home again, you know, the poverty that exists and how lucky we are in comparison, you know, relative in Ireland here. Yeah. And then on to Karachi in Pakistan, and to Bombay, and then we went to an island in the Indian Ocean called Christmas Island. And there's actually two Christmas Islands. There's one in the Pacific and there's one in the Indian Ocean. Liverpool was, because then it meant home, Dunleary was a short hop across the water, and it'd be a case of getting the mailboat into Dunleary. And I mean, the sight of the land coming up the harbour and the Wicklow Mountains, you know, and Bray Head, and seeing the outline of the coast showing up over the horizon, that was a fantastic feeling. That was very special homecoming sort of feeling that I got, you know, coming home like that. Yeah, it was great to be coming home. So then that was the 15 months, and I got engaged then. I went home. I should have said that I started courting a week before I joined the MV Huntsville, or a fortnight. And the whole time I was away, Helen, who was from the Dunleary area, was writing to me. So when I got home then, we got engaged. That was in December, it was in March 68. I had another 10-month voyage out in the Far East on the Caltex Rome, the SS Caltex Rome, a tanker that was built in the Second World War. And she was trading out in Indonesia and going into Singapore every so often. But that particular ship, we went from Singapore up to Japan again, to Kawasaki in Tokyo Bay. So my very last ship, MV Gotland, just a single voyage from Glasgow down to Mauritania in West Africa, a place called Nouadhibou, and it literally was sort of a jetty. And then when it came back to London, I signed off and actually resigned from Marconi Marine in February 69 after 4 and a bit years with them. Had plans to get married, settle down, have a family, and I wanted to be there for the kids. So in February 69 I resigned, and in March 69 I got married. For me, the 4 years, 4.5 years back then, they were years of adventure. They were years of going to new places, travelling. There was some kind of excitement when you were leaving one port and you're going to another port you hadn't been to ever before. And there was this sense of excitement. I look back on the 4.5 years I was a Seagoing radio officer as a happy time, an adventurous time, an exciting time. I enjoyed it while I was doing it. And but what happened was the technology overtook the position of radio officer. A lot of the technology moved onto the bridge, and it went from radio telegraphy, Morse code, to radio telephony, voice operated transmitters and receivers. So the job of radio officer is defunct now. It's no longer a requirement for ships to have a radio officer on board. But I thoroughly enjoyed my time and I look back on it with fondness.